Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Pav. I'm the host of Man with Purpose podcast. And today I have the huge pleasure to have Devaraj Sandberg, who is a therapist, a YouTube creator, and a facilitator on different kinds of workshops, bioenergetics, emotional release, and men's work. Dev, thanks for being on the show.
Thank you for inviting me, Pav. Thank you. It's a great pleasure.
So, how I stumbled across your work was, especially what really caught my attention was the field of bioenergetics, which I think is something that, in my opinion, is hugely beneficial, but not really very popular, I'd say. Maybe not so known kind of field in therapy, if you will. Maybe talk us a little bit about how you started on your journey with bioenergetics and men's work, and how did you even find this field in the first place?
Well, I didn't even get remotely interested in therapy or anything like that until I was nearly 40. I came from quite a traumatized childhood of adoption and drama and nearly dying and medical issues and stuff. And I basically went through life just trying to cover everything up and then just drink and take drugs and act out, and I dropped out of society at about age 21 and just sort of lived on the street for a while. And then I was too kind of angry to be a hippie, so I was a punk for a long time, because it was kind of, if you're really, really angry, it was okay to be a punk. So that was my chosen kind of subculture in London, North London, for many, many years. And I lived in squats for about a decade, mostly in the Camden area, and was just a complete sort of down and out. I drifted around the edges of kind of criminal society quite a lot, and just generally had a bit of a mad life, in some ways. But looking back, it was like I just wanted to get experience. I saw the life that was laid out for me if I was going to become a nice kind of, I don't know, working class or middle class kid and stuff. And it didn't look very exciting. And it looked much more exciting to kind of live on the street and see what happened. So I did that for a number of years. And at some point, I just had a really clear realization that I wasn't happy. I was about 38, 39. And it wasn't a very emotional realization, but it was just like suddenly inside, it was like, I'm just not happy. I'm just totally not happy with my life. And like, if I kind of had any choice, I would not be living this life. It would not have been the life I would have lived if I was kind of a little baby just about to start out again. And from this realization, I thought, well, okay, I have to do therapy. And it was like somewhere in my mind for 20 years, but I'm a bit of a mess, and I'm really a mess. And sometime I'm going to have to do therapy, but I'm not going to do it now. I'm just going to keep getting wasted. And then I got to about 38, 39, and I thought, okay, now's the time I have to do it. So I started to go around London looking for therapists and stuff. And I joined quite a good group that was going on in Old Street with a guy called Guy Gladstone. And he was teaching a little bit of sort of gentle bioenergetics. And he did these group therapy sessions where about 10 of us would gather and you'd talk about your stuff and this kind of thing. And it was pretty cool, but after a few months, I kind of had the feeling like it's going to take, I've been through way too much, and I'm too kind of hardened, on the outside to really feel anything, And I thought I need something a bit more kick-ass, a bit more intense, or, it's going to take me decades, So I continued looking around, and I came across the Osho people who, this was about 2000 or so, year 2000, and they were still in London, even though Osho himself, he was like an Indian mystic who, apart from other things, he was controversial, but apart from other things, he got a lot of people into therapy. He was really into kind of therapy and quite strong kind of body-based American stuff, the kind of things they were treating drug addicts with in the States, And so his followers were still around, even though he died about a decade before, and they were still running groups and stuff and putting on his meditations, Osho dynamic meditation, Kundalini, this kind of thing. And so I started to go to this, and it was pretty cool, And so I thought, wow, this is much cheaper for a start, and it's really quite full on, and you get to meet some quite interesting people, and pretty women were going to them as well, you know. So that was kind of exciting for me at the time. It was like a win-win thing in my brain. And then from there, I graduated on to I started to get exposure to an organization in Holland called the Humanaversity, which was run by a short Black American therapist called Devaraj, Denis Husson Sanchez. Sadly passed away a few years ago. But I first met him when he was running a very intense sort of 2-hour therapeutic process in London about 2000, 2001. And I thought, now this guy is really hardcore. You know, I thought he's really been through it. The therapists I'd kind of met before were all kind of nice, Guardian reading, you know, socially, politically aware people, but I didn't really resonate with them on a personal level. Nothing wrong with them, but I didn't really resonate. And this guy, I thought this guy has really been through it. You know, been a heroin addict for over a decade and got off drugs, and he, you know, from New York. And I thought this guy's really it. So I started to go along to his workshops, and they were very confrontational. You know, you'd be like 2 or 3 days in the group room. Sometimes you didn't even know when it was really going to end, and it would be full on, you know, and there would be a lot of screaming and shouting, emotional expression. There would be a lot of exercises to bring up feelings. There'd be a lot of, you know, interpersonal relating structures with all the other participants. And his whole approach was just kind of just blasting you for a few days so you could clear stuff out, get triggered to fuck, basically, and clear stuff out. Am I allowed to swear? I'm sorry, I'm not. I don't swear.
No problem, no problem.
Okay. So I just thought I'd check that. But like, so I kind of thought this is really full on and intense, and it's really going to trigger me like crazy. But I do really want change, and so I'm just going to sign up for the year before I change my mind, you know. So that's basically what I ended up doing.
I think you muted yourself.
Osho Lila at the time in Dorset, and I just started to do workshops there. And after about a year, I kind of ended up just moving there basically. And I stayed there for about 17 years, really, and was doing a lot of workshops, taking part in a lot of workshops as a participant for a long time. I went and stayed in the Humanaversity a bit as well, which was based in Holland, essentially. And just about a year and a half ago or so, I left and started to move out. I came to Brighton and started to run more work here, you know, because I figured I'd done so much time in community, I needed like a new challenge. But it took me a good 10 years or so really to clear out some of the depth of stuff that I was carrying around, because I was kind of in an extreme case in terms of trauma or therapy. I had all the main categories of trauma, and I had them pretty strong. And my approach was just to lock down and hold everything in, you know. So it took quite a while to uncover a lot of that stuff, and I'm still on a journey with my things. But about a decade ago, I started to run workshops myself, and probably about 4 or 5 years ago, I got more and more interested in bioenergetics, which I had learned at Humanaversity. It was one of many therapies that they were kind of giving people. And I just thought what the benefit of it was like, you didn't have to make a lot of screaming and shouting, which was kind of, to be a therapist out in the world, it's kind of difficult because you have to, with the kind of work that I was trained in, was a lot of really full-on emotional expression work, which inevitably makes a lot of noise. And so, but when you can't really do that in cities, you know, because people, the cops, you can't really find many places where you can really make a lot of racket. Got more interested in this bioenergetics, and then I found out that no one was really running any decent stuff on it on YouTube, not really going into it in any detail. So I continued studying myself, and I continued basically developing my own style and exercises intuitively from my own work on myself. And it just kind of took off a bit, and I got more and more into that. And especially now with all this lockdown stuff and going on, and kind of people talking about how, you know, I mean, I can't run any groups at the moment. I haven't run any groups for like months because, you know, you can't meet, so no groups, you know. So, but bioenergetics is something that you can do on your own in your little flat, or even like a prison cell or something, and clear an immense amount of stuff out. And so, you know, I'm just still really into it. I do it every day. I been doing it every day for like about nearly 4 years, basically.
Wow.
And I just go for it.
Mm-hmm. Wow, dude, sounds like you've been through a lot. Like this is one heck of a story, which, you know, I'm sure we'll get into. But one thing that's really caught my attention is you said you kind of, when you experience something, and that's certainly been the case for me, is when I experience something very intense, if you will, I tend to also look up and kind of go into my shell. And I also run men's groups. We have one every Friday. And that seems to be the case with a lot of guys. Do you think this is a typical masculine thing? Do you think, and again, this is also probably applicable for women as well. We speak from the point of being men, but I tend to find at least that this is quite a common thing across guys. Is this your experience as well?
Yeah, I don't know if it's genetically masculine, it might be, but certainly culturally masculine from the culture. I was brought up in kind of London and Essex, 70s and 80s culture. Yeah, you know, you hunker down and you act the tough guy. You know, you don't show vulnerability. You know, you don't, you just don't talk about what's going on inside unless it kind of fits in with the idea of how men are supposed to be culturally that we've picked up.
Yeah, I think this whole narrative of, you know, putting a mask on and, you know, being politically correct and not expressing emotions, all this kind of nonsense about manning up. I don't even know what that means, to be honest. Like, I certainly when I was growing up, that was always the case. Like, it was a bit difficult to express emotions, and I've only picked these kind of unconscious patterns over the last maybe 3 or 4 years that I started, acknowledging that, bring a lot more awareness to it, understanding it, and really start working with that. That seems to be, even working with other men, it seems to be quite a common thing, which you said maybe it's not genetic, but it's certainly a product of this culture that we live in right now.
Yeah. I mean, I don't, I don't have a problem with, basic masculinity, and this kind of, manning up and stuff. But when it just becomes an armor or a mask, which is blocking what's going on inside, then it's not really serving you or anybody else. And maybe in a crisis situation, you need to block out a lot of stuff and just deal with it. I don't really agree with a lot of new age male stuff as I kind of see it around the place. But at the same time, the idea that to deal with most of the feelings, you just have to lock down, that also is not really doing you many favors, because that energy is just now bound into your muscle system, and you don't have access to it to do what you want with it. In fact, a lot of the energy you do have left is kind of expended, pushing down into the muscle system to keep the stuff down. So it's totally non-functional on an energetic level.
Yeah. I had a conversation with my mother a couple of days ago, because we're looking after there's a family setting here where we have to look after a grandmother, an elderly person, and she said that because she has to shout at her because she doesn't really hear too well, and she's mentally she's not necessarily present. She said my mother said this to me, there's a lot more value in me actually expressing this in a vocal way rather than using the energy to suppress everything down. And then it kind of dawned on to me, coming back to what you're also saying about bioenergetics, it's really about being able to channel this energy in a constructive way rather than keeping it inside and really expending all this energy to keep it down.
Yeah. So for the average guy, they have to go on a bit of a journey of kind of opening up, but then really directing the energy in a way they want to, and it's almost like you have to give up certain aspects of traditional masculinity and then pick them up again later. It's like you have to give them up so that you can release some of the stuff from the past. In the more extreme therapy or more strong, full-on therapy, that's more what you do. With bioenergetics, it's a little bit gentler in a certain sense, in that it's not quite so confrontational. You're not sort of in a group with other people shouting at each other and putting judgments out and stuff like that. But what I'm trying to say is, you have to kind of let go of the control. But then when you've cleared stuff out, you can pick up the male side again, and I think that's also important, because if you're born male, I think it's good to develop the male side. and then if you want to be more feminine or something, fair enough, but for me, it's like you're born male, develop the male side, and then, what do you want to do with it is up to you,
Sure.
And yeah, basically.
For those of you, for those of people that are actually maybe tuning in now or are hearing the term bioenergetics for the first time, I was thinking, can you do like a short demo of how actually it looks like? Again, people are more than welcome to go on your channel as well and see the work that you're doing. Maybe something that, would help the common person or the common man, let's say, who has maybe can identify with this kind of locking in, going into their shell whenever something becomes intense, and maybe use something like this to really be able to open up the space and really exert the energy in a different way.
Sure. Yeah. Let's stop this talking for a minute and let's try and move my.
I think that's
the living room is a bit of a mess, but
no problem. We're experimenting. Yeah.
You see me okay?
Yeah, I can see you okay. I'll try and also follow along as well.
So here's a basic exercise I call the right to exist exercise. I'm not going to do it too loud because the woman downstairs gets a raging hump if I do. And but basically, you stand with your feet slightly wider than shoulder width apart.
Sure.
And you really drop your ass. So it's like just a bit. So you've got that flexibility in your knees, and you kind of feel a bit grounded.
Yeah.
And what you can do is you put your hands forwards like you want to take something, but you don't make them tight like a claw. Just a little bit like this.
Mm-hmm.
And then from the pelvis, you flick forwards and you make a low grunt sound, kind of like. And at the same time you do this, you make your face ugly, like an animal, especially good if you've got the nice guy trait, and you feel into the belly as you grunt. And you do this for something like 5-10 minutes. Try not to kind of swing your upper body around. The movement is from the hips. So the only part of your body that's really moving is from the hip here to the knee here. The rest of your body is relatively static. And it's kind of like. This is a great, this kind of starts to get energy moving in the belly, which is the main kind of male power center. It's there in all guys, but most guys have got it just switched off. Basically, they're not accessing it. So this is one great exercise you can do.
Sure.
Should I show you something else?
Yeah, let's do another one.
Let's do one more. Let's make sure I've got this camera to go down a bit lower. But this is an exercise which is a little bit like something you would see in yoga, but you add a little bit of release to it. So, Yogi, you'd love to see this. Can you see me okay?
I can see you perfectly. I'm just going to sit down. Yeah, because it would be difficult for me to do.
This is like the dog posture, down facing dog.
Yes.
But we're going to do it with your feet and hands quite wide apart. And then what you do, every now and again, is you drop your crotch so it doesn't touch the floor. You look straight ahead. You stick your tongue out and you kind of roar like a lion. You do a few roars, and then you go back into the dog and squeeze your heels towards the floor. And once again, you try and make the sound from your belly as much as you can. You try and keep it low, like a very low sound, like an animal growl.
Wow. Okay. This is pretty interesting stuff. And also the point is maybe to look a little bit ridiculous, because I've done a little bit of bioenergetics work. I go to workshops in London. I also done a little bit in Thailand. And the point is, the first time, if you're too self-conscious, right, you're overthinking, overanalyzing, overjudging, which has certainly been the case with me. You may feel a little bit like weird, right? Making all these noises and making all these kind of distorted faces, but that's the whole part of bioenergetics is to do that type of stuff, right?
Yeah, it's part of it to kind of break open the face mask a bit. A lot of guys have been kind of socially conditioned into just being the nice guy, and just trying to please other people, basically, and to avoid confrontation. So, their face has kind of become this nice mask, and it's not real, and then because all the energy is underneath, then it's sitting inside of them still, then it's going into negative ways, and so it's good for them to break that mask, and so looking really ugly like an animal is really useful for those people, and I mean, people can be self-conscious, but often if it's a room full of guys and everyone's going for it, then it's like, okay, I'm just going to do it.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, there's kind of the social pressure and, the fact
the
that
social pressure.
point of authority and.
Yeah, and I mean, with me and the workshops I run for men, I kind of build them as intense. I don't mess around. I don't say, come and do something nice and whatever. And this is going to be great. I'm saying this is going to be intense.
Yeah.
We'll clear stuff out, and for some people that approach works. It works.
Sure.
So I'm really trying to be straight up honest with people. It's not going to be a walk in the park. Some of it you'll probably find really fucking challenging, but I'm very experienced. I have good support, and we'll help you come through the other side.
And maybe we should have actually started with this, but can you maybe explain a little bit about the science behind bioenergetics and what bioenergetics is in the first place? Because we started throwing these terms, and I didn't really do like a proper introduction because I kind of think I understand it a little bit in my head, but maybe a little bit of intro about that, how it became popular, or how it kind of was created initially, and what's kind of the science behind that.
It's kind of I mean, there isn't really a really good history of it anyway. Certainly it seems to have come from different places, but in the West, and some shamanic traditions are quite, basically what you're doing in bioenergetics is you're putting your body in certain postures which open up certain muscle groups, and then you're breathing and feeling in classical bioenergetics. Those two exercises I just showed got a bit of expression in there as well. So they're bioenergetics, but with a bit of expression in as well. But mostly you're just putting your body in a certain posture, and you're really breathing and feeling deeply. And in the West, certainly it goes back to a guy called Wilhelm Reich about 100 years ago. He was like an Austrian psychotherapist, something like this. And he got interested in all sorts of weird shit, sexuality and making it rain and all sorts of things. He was kind of a mad inventor type, a bit as I see him. And one of the things he created was was called character structure, and the idea that people from their trauma in early childhood had developed one of 5 or one of 4 ways of kind of becoming as a personality. And the way to out of this was to put the body in certain positions and to breathe and feel. And then this work kind of passed on. He went to America when the Nazis came to power, and then his work kind of passed on to a guy called Alexander Lowen, amongst others, who was a student of his. And in the 1950s, I think it was, Alexander Lowen started writing books about this, and he called this technique bioenergetics. And he kind of did it as like, partly you do psychotherapy and partly you do this body work, this putting your body in positions and stuff. But subsequent to that, different people kind of worked at it. Quite a lot of people in South America were interested in using the body a lot. And it kind of slowly developed in different directions. So it's a bit of a chaotic mess, but it has certain kind of common elements and threads to it. And the style I tend to use doesn't really rely on psychotherapy very much. It's more, okay, we just give your mind a couple of little jobs to do, which are stay in the posture, breathe, feel your body, and then the body kind of does it by itself. Because what we've learned about trauma, from in the 1990s, polyvagal theory, and guys like Peter Levine wrote a book called Waking the Tiger. Before that was a guy called Bessel van der Kolk in America who was researching trauma in Vietnam American vets. And what we know about trauma really is that it is energy that's bound into the muscle system. That's how it affects the physical body, and so people's bodies develop weird when they've been traumatized, and physically, their posture changes, they look a bit strange, there's energy bound inside of them. There's not tons of scientific research on it, to be honest, it looks as though what kind of happens is that when there's any kind of threat present to you, say you were suddenly put into, or you were just walking down the street, it's late at night, some guy jumps out on you, it looks scary, your fight and flight system is activated, your sympathetic nervous system. And at a certain point sometimes, especially if a threat comes in close, what people do is almost freeze for a while, freeze. And while they're freezing, because it's one of the animal defense systems is to freeze and try and play dead, blend in with things.
Sure.
Whilst they're doing that, the energy that's been mobilized in their body from fight and flight reflex gets locked into the body. And when this happens in animals, you know, like other primates, then after the threat has gone, assuming it goes and you don't get killed,
start shaking. Yeah.
They start to shake, or their body just kind of trembles. You know, just kind of trembles like these wildlife photographers and stuff. You know, for TV programs, they're filming like an antelope for like all day and stuff. And every now and again, its body's just doing this trembling, and that's your body's natural way of releasing. But what happens with humans, you know, they've got that natural way of releasing, but because our higher mind up here is really developed, you know, prefrontal cortex, frontal lobes, we can make very complicated self-image. What we tend to do is just hold it all in and just try and get along without really dealing with it, you know. We don't want to be shaking, we don't want to be releasing. And so we just kind of rock along, you know. And so what happens in people's lives is you've got this kind of higher mind up here, the thinking brain, trying to be positive, you know, trying to go for the best things. But there's this huge charge in the body, but other parts of your mind are trying to release. And how they try to release it is by dragging you back into all the old conflicts again and again. So on a practical level, you might find, like, you know, you go to work for a company, you're 22 years old, and it's all good for 3 months. And then you just start getting really pissed off with your boss. You know, he's just triggering you all the time. And at some point you get the sack, or you just leave the company because he's such an arsehole. And say, for example, you also had a very authoritarian dad, and you never really dealt with the trauma that's held in your body from that. So you go back and get another job. It's all good for 6 months, and then once again, same thing happens. Same thing happens repetitively. And it's happening because your lower mind is pulling you. It wants to release the trauma. So it's pulling you back into all the old conflicts that you have with your dad, like symbolically with the boss. And your higher mind doesn't want to feel it. It doesn't want to engage with it. So it just takes you out of the situation. So a lot of people are going through life with like 1 foot on the accelerator and 1 foot on the brake because of this. And bioenergetics is a way to take the trauma out of the body, You know, there's mental strategies that you can use for trauma, for relearning certain behaviors, for, you know, going closer to things which you're scared of and this kind of stuff. But if there's still a charge in the body, you haven't really released the past, and it will always find a way to come in and get you. You know? So for anybody who wants to really get the best out of life, to be like the best version of themselves, bioenergetics is really worth investing time in. Once you can clear this charge out of your muscle system, there's very little stopping you from going forwards and going up. Most people who try to succeed and change their life, their experiences, they repeatedly come back to the same place in reality. You know, like you could go and see like Tony Robbins, you know, he's like a mega famous, you know, Anthony Robbins, but he's a great guy, you know, huge, great guy, you know, and you go 10,000 people in Wembley Arena and like, we can do it, you know, standing up all day long, shouting, we can do it. And you come out of 4 days of that and you're charged up, you're going to just totally change the world, you're totally going to change your life, it's going to be brilliant. 1 month follow-up study, 99% of people are back where they started because the charge in the muscle system pulls them back down. It pulls them back into all the old negative thought patterns. So bioenergetics is kind of a missing link in stepping up. We know how to make people's minds go positive. You know, we can do that. But without taking the charge out of the muscles, they will always drift back. Or for most people, they will drift back.
Yeah, to add to that point, yeah, I've been to Tony Robbins, you know, Unleash the Power Within UPW in London three times, I think. So yeah, there is definitely the benefit of actually, instead of being to an education or event, it's actual experience. And I think we live, at least my observation up until this point, is we live in a society which tend to overvalues thinking, and rather the missing bit that, you know, because everything is about balance. The whole missing bit is the feeling and really getting back into your body, because you're up here thinking that's going to solve all of the problems, and in fact it just creates more and more thinking and meta thinking, etc., and you get caught up in this kind of downward spiral.
Exactly, you know, and For the odd person, maybe just thinking positively is enough. When I read a little bit about Tony Robbins' childhood and adolescence, it seems like he wasn't that successful. He started to do NLP, neuro-linguistic programming, and somewhere it just activated energy, and he just exploded out onto the scene. And like 5 years down the line, he's like coaching presidents and stuff like this. And so, of course, his expectation would be you do some NLP, and it's going to totally radically change your life. But the reality for the vast majority of normal people that do NLP, it does not do that. You might get some benefits for a while, but you notice, if you're honest, stuff just comes back up again. It's because of the trauma held in the body. It's because of the charge held in the muscle system. It's going to keep on putting you back until you address it.
I've certainly trained in NLP. This is how I kind of started with this personal development, if you will. Multiple workshops, practitioner, master practitioner, all the type of, like, I did it for about 3 or 4 years under the guidance of a very, very, very good coach, James Hutchinson. And I saw a lot of value in that, but over the last maybe 3 years, I've really started seeing the value of actually getting back into the body, screaming, yelling, shouting, going through like an emotional release, I think it's called, right? Emotional release or emotional expression. Yeah. So that, especially when I started working with men and doing men's work, I can see the value of doing something like this. Really, there's so much charge being stored in the body that is not being released in a creative way, right? And most of the time, certainly when I've been a part of events like that, it's very difficult to find an appropriate venue to be able to channel this type of energy as a man, right? Society doesn't say it's okay to shout, it's okay to really release this trauma. No, it's okay to be a nice guy, a good boy that follows the rules. And I think that really takes away a lot of the opportunities for a man to be able to really heal, really, because this is all, at the end of the day, this is all about healing.
Yeah, I mean, there aren't so many workshops around where you can really get into the stuff, because most people know somewhere, guys are honest somewhere, you're carrying shit around, and there's not so many. And of course, you have to feel safe, in the situation before it's going to start to come up, and you allow it to be healed and to move on from it. And the reality is, our culture isn't really doing so much of that these days, In fact, in reality, it's like a lot of the therapy has gone much more up in the mind. Even when I started, it was kind of at the tail end of, the heavy body-based therapists, the strong male therapists pushing people through a process, and they've all kind of died out one way or the other. Or, the culture's just moved on a bit. But it will have to come back at some point, because just you realize at some point you can't think your way through it. You could go to NLP or something similar and have an amazing experience. But maybe a year or two, like you say, down the line, you start to realize the change hasn't been that deep. And there's something which keeps pulling you back. And people are in denial for a while, and it's me, I just need to keep moving forwards and whatever. But at some point, you can start to address this, and things like bioenergetics can really help, that they slowly over time, you start to release the charge, and it's like, okay, I can go towards the positive now. I can manifest my dreams. Those habitual feelings of low self-esteem don't affect me so much anymore. I can go for the number one person I fancy, as opposed to the one over there or whatever,
Understood. What were the benefits, apart from, releasing this charge and helping to heal trauma? What other things were maybe changed after you started doing bioenergetics for you personally?
I mean, for me personally, I'd already done quite a bit of therapy at that point. What it gave me was like a kind of resilience on a certain level. It's like, in the same way that, because you do get the kind of, you're clearing out the past, and in it you also get this kind of positivity, a little bit like when you go to the gym or something like that, this feeling of I can do it, quite strong, and even when negativity comes your way, because anyone trying to do something new out in the world will get knockbacks, it's guaranteed, and a lot of people then collapse at that point, but you kind of, what I noticed was I was kind of changing my life, and I'm pretty old, but like, I was like but I've still got the energy from the daily bioenergetics to say, okay, I've had a few knockbacks. It hasn't worked out the way I wanted, but let's just, rather than collapse and say, oh, it's no good and I can't do it, just to sit there and just say, okay, no, but I can try this, or tomorrow I can do that. Let's just keep moving forwards. And what I discovered really with being successful as an individual is you have to just keep going, really, you know. And bioenergetics kind of gives you the resilience and the positivity and the energy as well, because you're slowly liberating more of your own natural energy. So it kind of gives you the potential to keep moving forwards.
That's a great point. Yeah, it's for me, one of the big things was, you know, they say that, you know, feeling is actually understanding. And when I was like, okay, bioenergetics is good, and I watched a couple of videos of Elliot House. Then I went to a workshop there. Man, it felt totally different. Like you doing it alone in front of a camera, which that in and of itself has tremendous benefits. Even you doing that alone is great. But then doing it in a surrounding with other people, you really kind of feed off, at least for me, feed off the energy of other people, just like really full on 100 miles per hour type of experience. Wow. Okay. So I know that you combine kind of men's workshops with bioenergetics. What are most of the times, you know, the men that are coming in to seek help or seek assistance? What are the, you know, their experiences? Is it around trauma? Is it around healing? Is it maybe a bit of both? Maybe a little bit else, or something else as well?
Well, I think ever since this guy wrote this book, No More Mr. Nice Guy, you know, Robert Glover, was that his name?
Robert Glover, yes.
Yeah. An American guy back in the 90s, you know. This has inspired a lot of men to kind of, it's given them a way to articulate to themselves their own childhood experience and how it's affected them. So I get quite a few guys who feel they're too trapped in the nice guy and they want to really get more in their belly, in their body, and, you know, overcome that stuff. And it's very good to have a men's group for that, because women, even though there's some brilliant women therapists around, if you have a group with men and women, one, people will be trying to look good for the other sex. It's inevitable. They will be competing.
Guys wanna get late. Guys wanna get late.
Sure.
Let's face it.
Women too.
For sure.
There will be competition trips going on, but also women cannot really support men to stand up. You know, they can support men to open their heart and talk about what's really going on inside, but they will not really support men to really stand up and live their individuality. It goes against the kind of the typical kind of genetic interaction between men and women. You know, find the man, get him to have the baby and support this and this kind of thing, you know. So, you know, men's groups are very useful, and in tribal culture, of course, you know, it was normal for the men to spend time together initiating younger males into masculinity, you know.
Rites of passage, initiations, yeah.
Exactly. You know, and that has been kind of lost in our culture. So masculinity has been under siege, you know, for like generations, basically. So men's groups are really great for this. I get a lot of guys who just, you know, some guys will talk about what's going on, some guys won't, but certainly a lot caught him a nice guy. I get a few caught up in the tough guy kind of thing, where they can't access vulnerability, they can't cry at all, and they want to do some body work to kind of clear that. I get a lot of guys who just want to be better, you know, they just want to be better at who they are, you know, and feel better about themselves and be able to do something really meaningful in the world, you know, as opposed to just having some crap job that they don't really care about so much.
Yeah, that's a great point, especially when you said about Robert Glover in the book that he wrote. I started reading a book recently called Hard Times Create Strong Men by a guy called Stefan Arnio, which unfortunately passed away. And in there, he was kind of also coming from a similar angle, where he kind of has a very short poem. Hard times create strong men create good times create weak men, and weak men create hard times. And I think where this is supposed to, in his kind of theory, this is supposed to be, those 4 lines represent 4 generations, each spanning about 20 years. And he said we're at the tail end of this. And I'm like, yeah, I'm looking around, looking at what's on the media, what's, you know, surrounding social life. There's really a lot of weak men, and that's not necessarily their fault, although they should take responsibility for it, which is probably the super difficult thing to do. But I've certainly been a nice guy and still am to an extent, like everybody's on their own journey. But I feel that I read that and I'm like, wow, this is pretty accurate for, the state of masculinity, let's say, out there. And I have no problem with, and I'm not like into politics and getting, being politically correct. In fact, I'm a proponent of speaking the truth as it is. And right now, I think we have a very feminized society, certainly in the West, and which I think seems to be really suppressing. Somehow, it's not okay to be a man. And at least this is what I've seen so far. I'm not sure what your experience has been, but all the other guys seem to be very nice guys, and that seems to really put things in a different spot. There's not enough good, strong men out there to really take charge and lead us from whatever tough times we're facing right now. I'm going on a bit of a rant here, but I thought I'd add this there because I think it's interesting what you said about the nice guy syndrome.
Yeah. I never read that book. Hard Times Make Strong Men. I heard about it.
Hard Times Create Strong Men.
Create Strong Men, yeah. Maybe I'll get hold of that. I don't read tons, but I might get hold of that. But yeah, totally. It's a really interesting idea. No one had ever told me that poem before. But you see, the thing that's really the core of it is what I hear from a lot of the people coming out of a nice guy mode is they're a bit like the women in the Me Too movement in a way, in that they want to blame the society. They want to blame the culture.
Victim mentality.
But the trouble is, every time you put the point of change outside of your own being, you've just made yourself a victim. So the trick really is to look into the situation and say, how can I take responsibility and get stuff out of this? Like, okay, so all the women around me are trying to push me to be the nice guy and give me a hard time if I'm just a kind of sexist pig or whatever. And it's like, how you can see that as a challenge. How do you live your masculinity and your authenticity as a man in a world where everywhere you're being hammered by the image that you should be a nice guy and you should emasculate yourself? In the same way, like, I was just listening to a bodybuilder guy on London Real, good guy, Dorian something, and
Dorian Yates, yeah.
Yes, he's talking about all the challenge of the COVID lockdown. He's in Spain, he's talking about that. And in England, we got this big lockdown. And it's like, I can go into that. I can be a right conspiracy theorist, totally, But also, it's like, look for the positive aspects of being on lockdown. For me, I'm going through a lot of stuff, and it's really bringing me aware of certain parts of my personality that I wasn't aware of before, So hard times can create the strong men, Being in a very challenging situation can be useful. I found a lot, but if I look back now from these last couple of months to the last 5 years, it was pretty easy, really, I mean, it was pretty soft. I was just chugging along and doing stuff, and I got my challenges and stuff, but like suddenly we're in this whole lockdown, and it's like, wow, we're in a real challenge now. This is really fucking real, and it's like, okay, what are we going to do in this situation? What am I going to do in this situation? Who am I? How do I be authentic in this situation? How do I make use of this situation to the max?
Yeah, I hate like quoting books, but to support that, your point, David Data's book, The Way of the Superior Man, right? He kind of says that the masculine grows through challenge. And again, this is obviously generalization. Not everybody is driven by the same thing, but I really think we need more challenge to really build this character up. And like you said, not being a victim, but actually taking extreme ownership for whatever is happening. And from that point onwards, okay, what is it that I can do here? Rather than just blaming people, etc., etc. The other thing this guy, Stephen Arnew, says in the book is that women really want hypergamy, meaning that they want someone who is better, stronger than them, in the sense that they want to be able to rely on someone who is strong, right? As opposed to all these mama's boys or super nice guys who, when they're in a relationship, it's just a dynamic is there is no polarity. There is no masculine. The woman is kind of almost a mother figure sometimes, and that really destroys the relationship and the polarity, I think.
Yeah, I mean, I lived in Osho society for a long time, and communities and that kind of thing. And I totally hear with a lot of guys who say, men should be strong and women want to rely on strong men. And there's definitely women who are into that and men who are into that. And I can be totally into that as well. But at the same time, I don't know that that is necessarily the end of the story. Women are very strong. Women are very strong in their core. They are the ones that carry the line. They have the babies, basically. And certainly when you look at like the culture of the last 1,000 years, there is a lot of areas where men are just trying with their kind of advanced, objective, rational mind to just control women. Basically, they are. To me, it's just absolutely clear. And I don't know that anyone's really supported by that, And what was kind of interesting living around the Osho scene for a long time is that the Osho scene was a total fucking matriarchy. I mean, absolutely total. So you actually had, for probably the first time in 1,000 years or something, an active culture of tens of thousands of people living in matriarchal structures where the women were the bosses. Around Osho, it was all women, the Mars, they used to call them, and strong as fuck. And then the men are coming into this structure where out in the world, of course, they're used to be in control and in charge and bossing everyone around and taking all the big decisions. And they're totally out of that process. And it's like a kind of journey for a man coming into that structure. But pretty soon they chill with it. They chill with it. It's kind of interesting. But so I hear a lot of guys in the men's movement and stuff and, saying these things about men should be this way and women should be that way. And I'm not 100% convinced. I don't really know the truth. I don't really know. So, I'm open to different interpretations, and I've lived in quite matriarchal structures and been cool with it as well. It's like guys get on. For men, the main thing is to start to talk about stuff that's going on inside and stop keeping the tough guy image up. And once they see other guys doing that, that happens quite easy. And then they can live communally quite easy. And then what you'd see around the Osho scene was the women would fight. The women would fight for power roles and they would fight for trophy men. So the whole thing fucking reverses. And it's not. I don't know if one's better than the other or one's more real. Or maybe some genetic person works it out. I don't know.
Sure.
But, I introduce a bit. I don't know if it's so closeted our future. Something else, something that is a bit different and that's significant here between men and women that I see is that women seem to do better without a, what do you call it? Someone who to look up to when you're a kid. A role model.
A role model, okay.
Yeah. Women seem to do better without a role model than young men. Young women seem to be able to move forwards more easily without a role model. I don't know if that's cultural or genetic. And that has kind of contributed in a way to the issues because there's so few strong male role models in our culture. A lot of men just seem to naturally assume, okay, I've just got to be this nice guy and just get on and work. And that's my life, So probably young men may need more of a role model. They may need more of a role model.
100%.
To lead the way a bit rather than young women, So I do see there's differences. And I think that on its own is, who would you look to in British society as a positive, strong male role model? Is there anyone in the government or politics? I don't think so, It's like, it's a fucking joke,
Man. Yeah.
I listen to young Americans talk, or Americans in their 30s and 40s, and they used to say The Rock. I used to love The Rock. Because he was the only guy that was kind of standing up when they were like 12 years old and being really male, just being really male on TV,
Yeah.
And, even now I don't really follow his film roles, but they seem to be more feminine these days or something like that, and that kind
of funny thing, yeah.
It's like, so there is something where a lot of the strong male role models have been a bit eradicated, and that needs to kind of come back in them.
Yeah, for sure. I think women are saying that they need more stronger men. And when I say strong men, I'm not necessarily meaning in this kind of classical patriarchy where there's maybe in the 70s or 60s where the man is kind of saying everything, calling all the shots, what needs to happen. I think. At least this is what my observation is. Every single time one sex wins, both sex loses. Both of the sex lose, whenever there is one, because everything is balanced, right? There needs to be this kind of dichotomy happening there versus if only one sex is winning, it tend to become like a very oppressive environment, at least from what I've seen. So I'm also a little bit also on the journey, trying to make up my mind. Okay, what's the right thing for me? What's the right thing that I need to, the type of messages I need to be pushing out. So I think, yeah, you said it pretty well. You said it pretty well. It's not necessarily set in stone. So yeah, good point. Good point there.
Yeah, and you know, relating to what you just said, great point. And also, like, who do you choose as a partner? Do you just choose someone you've got control over, or do you choose someone who's going to challenge you? You know, that's also for men and women. It's like to look at that, you know, for individually. Okay, do I choose someone that I just know I can control and they're going to give me what I need, or do I choose someone who's going to fucking challenge the shit out of me? You know, it's like, because that's what makes someone really sexy often. You know, it's like, it's not just for physical beauty that they look good on Instagram. It's like that kind of energy. They're going to challenge the shit out of you. It's
Yeah.
like, so that also, you know, is something to look at for individuals, you know.
Great point. I think that really the right woman, if a man is lucky enough to really see past the whole beauty and the whole Instagram, you know, women type of stereotype that is being really pushed in our faces, and if he finds really his queen, then she's really going to demand the best of him. She's not going to settle for like a mediocre dude. She's going to really drive, kicking and screaming for this man to get his potential. At least I've seen that certainly happen in my relationships. And also a buddy of mine who's also a shaman was saying the same thing. Like, I got into really one-on-one personal development through intimate relationships, and these women just really were pushing him and testing him. So yeah, I echo that point as well.
Cool.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay, Dev, I'm also conscious of time. So I know that you're running an online course for bioenergetics.
Yes.
Where can people find more about you? I know that you're also running different projects like Project Man. Maybe tell a little bit about that, and also a book that you're about to finish soon.
Sure, man. Sure. I mean, you know, if people just want to get a bit of an experience of bioenergetics and give it a go, you can go onto YouTube and look for me. Just look for Devaraj Bioenergetics. You're going to find it. Devaraj Sandberg, my name. And right at the moment, I've been running these lockdown challenges for 5 weeks. So, you know, you can look for the lockdown challenge, and it gives you like a 20-minute workout that you can do, and just you get an experience of it. You know, and if you find it's really working for you and you want to do something more committed and full on, you can sign up for a course called Bioenergetics Journey, which is an online course. And that's a 52-week course, which you could finish in 52 weeks, but you'd have to really go for it. Most people would finish it in 1.5 to 2 years. So that's a lot of content. That costs £50 a month to be on. But you have daily work to do, you know, with the bio. And it also leads into a practitioner training, or facilitator training, really, I should say, if that's kind of interesting to you. So that's all at bioenergetics.org.uk, you know. And Project Man at the moment is kind of a little bit in suspension because I can't run any workshops. So I'm planning it, it'll be in Brighton or London in the autumn. As soon as it's kind of clear what's going on with this whole lockdown thing. I was very lucky that the last one I ran was, I think, early March, just before 2 days before the lockdown kind of came in, or the weekend before the lockdown came in, to which, even though quite a lot of guys had to cancel who were going to fly in from Europe because they were worried they wouldn't be let back in, but nevertheless, we managed to run that. I think it'll probably be something like October, because Britain's looking like it's going to take a while. But it's a really great group, and you can also find information about all the stuff I'm doing at bioenergetics.org.uk. And there's, like, in the top left, a mailing list, you know, one of those. You can sign up for the mailing list. I don't send so many mails out, but when anything interesting is happening, then I'll send a mail out so you'll be in the loop. I'm also writing a book, like I said. In fact, I'm probably going to write about 3 books on bioenergetics, but this is the first one, and it's called Healing, Trauma and Conditioning. And what I noticed was really a gap in the market was books where there's a lot of the actual real physical exercises, you know. It's like Alexander Lowen wrote about 15 books on bioenergetics, but only one of them really has a significant number of exercises in. And that's kind of old, and it's good, but it's not so juicy and exciting. And in the English language, there's very little else. So I thought, okay, let's just sit down and write a book which has got about 90, 100 exercises in it, and explain a bit of psychological dynamics and understanding it all. So that is actually complete, and it's currently being typeset by a guy, and I'm going to self-publish it at the end of the month. So it's pretty much, it should be out end of May, early June, basically, to buy as hard copy, like, you know, paperback printed, or you know, like Kindle stuff, you know, that kind of thing. And that's will have a lot of, you know, it'll have some theoretical stuff in it as well, but it'll have a lot of exercises that you can just practice and do, and a lot of stuff that you won't find anywhere else online, basically, or you won't find anywhere else in a book. You know, there's a huge gap in terms of bioenergetics in print. You know, it's just a massive gap. It's really missing. So those are the kind of projects I'm kind of keep me busy during lockdown and stuff. And like I say, I'm developing a facilitator training as well, which is mostly online. Like Bioenergetics, the journey is the first part of it, but it gives you, like, you know, the people who get turned on to it and who think, okay, I want to teach this, or, you know, I want to add it to the therapy that I'm already doing.
Wow. Okay, cool. Definitely go and check Dev's stuff out. Like, his content on YouTube is great in and of itself, but definitely go and check out his course and also look forward to the book. Dev, I want to really thank you very much for doing the interview, really spending the time together. I'm sure there's going to be a lot of people who are interested even more to figure out, to learn more about bioenergetics. And also thanks for everybody for tuning in. See you next time.
Thank you, Pav. Thank you very much. Cheers.